There we go.
Isn't it horrible sometimes being able to see yourself while
Yeah,
recording?
no.
This feels like a Jubilee video now.
Yeah, this is what it is.
Oh,
Okay, we're ready.
Okay, introduce yourself.
I'm stressed.
That's not.
Hey guys, welcome back to Michaelia's YouTube channel.
I am here today with my roommate Ashley, who was not on the screen. There's Ashley's hand. And my friend Megan here.
Hello.
Wow. We are all sophomores here at Minerva University, and today we are here to unravel the strange question of why the two of us left very top prestigious universities.
Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Megan. I'm originally from the United States, specifically Kentucky, and both of us are presently studying abroad with Minerva University in Taipei, Taiwan. My background is that I was homeschooled for high school. Then I went to Cornell University for a full academic year, and then I transferred, or Minerva's version of transferring, to Minerva from there.
Hello, this is my channel, so there's a possibility that you would know me. I am Michaelia, and my favorite conversation topic, especially on YouTube, is about why I left NUS for Minerva. I am born and raised in Singapore. I did all years of school in the Singapore public education. I did one academic year at the National University of Singapore, which is conventionally considered the top school in Singapore, or some would say in the entirety of Asia. And then I transferred, or as Megan said, Minerva's version of transfer, to Minerva University. And I'm now in Taiwan.
Yeah.
So why did you guys initially choose NUS or Cornell?
It was a long thought process for me. My parents always wanted me to go to an Ivy League, especially being homeschooled for high school. It was kind of like the prove yourself moment. Like, my education was actually as valid as no one thought it was. I worked for my family's business, and I just sat AP tests. Like, that's what I did for my high school education. Like, I didn't receive that thorough of an education, but I got to run a business. And that's ultimately the edge that got me into Cornell. I applied early decision for a couple of reasons. First of all, Cornell doesn't, I don't think, have early action, so I couldn't do that. And second of all, I already had a full ride with the United States Air Force through ROTC.
What's ROTC?
Reserves Officer Training Corps.
Wow.
Which, fun title, but essentially what it is they train you to be an officer during your 4 years of your undergrad, and in exchange, if you apply for a scholarship and get it, they will pay for the tuition to your university. If it is on a specific list, if you get into the Ivy League partnered with this scholarship, they'll pay full tuition. This has changed since my year. I was the final year to get a full ride under this specific policy, and I'm not familiar with ROTC's policies now. We kind of got the cream of the crop. The other part of the contract was I had 1 year to decide if I wanted to be in the military, and they wouldn't ask me to pay the tuition back. So essentially, I got a free year of university on the United States military bill, but I really wanted to go and try the program. So this partnered with the fact that I wanted to go to a really prestigious school, and the fact that I ran my family's restaurant and applied to Cornell's hospitality school. Their Johnson School of Business is notoriously more difficult to get into than the hotel school. I wanted to go to an Ivy League because I thought that it would be a place where everyone was trying to be the best version of themselves, or at least trying to achieve something in their lives that was meaningful. And they were trying to do that through university. Not that I didn't love it or anything like that. I think there's this common misconception. People are like, oh my gosh, you left. You must have had a horrible time. I had a good GPA. I had great relationships with my professors, and I was on a sports team. I loved my university experience. I just didn't love the person that it was making me to be.
Whoa, that's deep.
Okay, why did you initially choose NUS, Michaelia?
When I was 15 or 16, I decided that my dream school was Yale and US. And that was when Yale, as in Yale, the Ivy League, made a partnership with NUS, the National University of Singapore, to make the first really dedicated liberal arts college in Asia, which would be connected to NUS. Really fun thing happened in my final year of high school. It was 2 or 3 months before A-level, so peak stress moment. One fine day on the news, we saw Yale and US to stop taking in students starting right now. And then I was like, well, great. I have 2 or 3 months until the biggest event of my life. I suddenly have no idea what university I'm going to apply to. So I started looking into I already knew that I wanted like a liberal arts style of education. And now that that has suddenly evaporated from the face of Asia, I was like, I should look into going to America. And I applied to all these American schools, a very intense thing to do with 2 months when you're supposed to have been preparing for this for like 5 years. I did not get into any of the schools that I applied to. To be very honest, NUS was kind of like a backup, which I think a lot of people would hate to hear me say because NUS is objectively a really good school. It's difficult to get into. I think I already just had the gut feeling from the get-go that it wasn't what I was looking for. That being said, I also knew that NUS was a very big school with a lot of different types of people, especially because NUS just started this program called the College of Humanities and Sciences that was very much also like a liberal arts inspired broad-based curriculum for your first 2 years, and you pick your major later on. You get to do a lot of electives, and I knew that NUS was where a lot of these great minds are, so I was pretty optimistic.
And what was your expectation of studying there?
I was expecting to be trying a lot of different things. I was also in Raffles Hall. Hall is a really weird concept to explain. It's kind of like a sorority in the sense that there's like a residential program with a lot of like internal events with like a super long history. It's about like doing like 7 clubs, living in this place with the same people. And it's like you kind of sell half of your soul to it while you're there. Basically, I was expecting to be really challenged academically, brain expanding, meeting awesome people.
Okay, what motivated you guys to leave Cornell/NUS?
Oh, such a loaded question.
Yeah, I knew it was a really loaded question. I was thinking of breaking it down, and then I was like, I don't even know how I would break down this question.
Yeah, I think
When and how did you realize you wanted to leave?
the timeline for me was first, I realized I didn't want to be in the military anymore. It's like a love-hate relationship. I adore the program, I adore the people in it, and the mentorship that I got. And I really like the intense physical activities and how they teach people and leadership and everything. If you're looking into ROTC, highly recommend. The reason that I didn't choose it was because what I wanted to do was what they call a rated career. Rated is kind of what you think of when you think of like more normal military things. In regards to active combat, more or less. It was a 4-year training commitment during university and then 6-year contract post-university. And typically 2 to 4 years of reserve training after that. So I was signing between 8 to 10 years of my postgraduate life away, and I just wasn't comfortable with that. And I didn't need it from a financial perspective, which I'm very grateful for. And so that's why I dropped it. So as soon as I knew I was dropping it, then it was, I don't have financial aid. Does it make sense to pay $80,000 a year to stay at this institution? Some people can justify it, and I respect that. But for me, there were a lot of other problems, like what can I do with $80,000 in a year? A lot more than what I'm getting out of this university experience. So I maybe could have pushed for some financial aid, but my family's in a tricky position when it comes to running a business. It looks like you make a lot of money, and some years you don't, and some years you do, and it wasn't a good tax year for us. It looked like we were making a lot of money year over year, and it wasn't necessarily the case, and I couldn't get any financial aid. There is a lot behind closed doors when it comes to these elitist institutions, and of course I can only speak to Cornell. The expectation was you're going to a place where you're essentially being pushed to be the best version of yourself, and then you're going to exit and have all these opportunities, all of these connections, and make a change in the world. Of course, some people don't make good changes, and people want to go and work for Goldman Sachs or big corporations that we know are not doing the best things for. And that's completely fine if that's what people want for their career path, and I don't judge that at all. I didn't feel like people were being pushed to be better people. I didn't feel like I was becoming a better person. I felt like I was being bought in slowly to a system that perpetuated inequality within the US. None of my friends from international backgrounds were actually from what I consider to be an international background. They went to an American institution, their parents paid full tuition, and they were handed things from a very long time. It wasn't necessarily like Cornell was their opportunity to access a lot of things. They would have had access to these resources regardless. I'm not saying that people didn't deserve to be at Cornell by any means. Being in business, I was very close to a lot of wealth, and within this wealth, it's just a bit sad that people don't take advantage of the opportunities. I felt like I was not excelling that much, but I was definitely saying yes to everything that came my way, and I saw results from that. And it's really concerning to see people blow off class, to see people not care about exams, to see people not put in effort to their education and to becoming a better person, but instead going and getting drunk every night. Partying is fine. There's nothing wrong with partying, and so many institutions have it. I just think I was shocked by the role that partying played, by the amount of alcohol that was consumed, by the things that were happening behind closed doors in regards to sexual assault, in regards to people being drugged, and the institution did nothing about it, objectively. They closed a fraternity for 6 months, then they opened it again and the same thing happened. It wasn't a place to become a better person. It was a place to become a person who was okay with the world as it is, not as you want it to become. I don't think that it's okay that people are fine with being drugged, or the possibility of being drugged on a nightly basis, or like the amount of sexual assault that was happening, but you still continue to go to this institution. You have such pride in this institution that in reality is just connecting you to money and resources. I have such a privilege to be able to make this decision because some of my friends, or a lot of people I talk to, were like, oh my gosh, I hate it so much here, I want to leave. And people don't feel like they have the option to leave. It's so much easier for your academics, it's so much easier for your career, and if you try, literally everything will be handed to you on a silver platter. And maybe this is different depending on colleges, so I want to keep this in mind. Like, I was in hotel/business, and so trying in that field was very much rewarded versus, oh god, well, it's fine. Versus like with engineering, there's just a lot more people in engineering, so it's very different. To sum it up, I didn't love the person I was becoming. I'm not someone who necessarily wants to go into corporate, but of course want to learn from the corporate field of things. And like, it very much pushes you to think you need to graduate and make 6 figures, to think that you should be part of these elitist social groups, to think that the party scene is okay, which I really don't think it is, and to also think that university is there to serve you, and other people are less than if they don't go to such an elitist university. A lot of people graduate, and I think they make very different decisions because they've been molded and shaped into a different person over those 4 years, and I didn't want to become that version of myself in 4 years. So that's why I left. And like, the timeline becomes a little hazy after Air Force, but like, got into Minerva, then it became an option, then we ended up here. I did love my experience. I know I've just said a lot of real horrible things about the institution and everything, but I loved it. But I loved it. I got to do so much of the American college experience that I'm so grateful for, and that I don't think I would have been able to go to Minerva without having done previously.
I have so many thoughts about what you just said.
We should move this though, because now we can see this thing. And because
the only reason we're using this white background is because the lighting in this room is the best.
It's actually really good lighting.
I didn't know that the partying thing was such a big thing.
My friends will say, no, it's part of youth. The common trope at these elite institutions is, I work so hard to get here, now I get to enjoy being here.
That's also an idea that doesn't make sense to me, because I'm like, you're paying $80K a year or more to not be studying and using the resources of this institution.
Yeah, but a lot of people have financial aid. But the financial aid always stretches your family thin. All of my friends on financial aid felt the burden of going to school. And a lot of people did work really hard because they knew this. It just shocked me the amount that people didn't understand alcohol was harming them.
Really?
People don't get that you don't learn as well when you're drinking a ton, or that maybe taking an exam on a hangover isn't a good idea, or that you make decisions with guys that you wouldn't make if you weren't under the influence. It's part of growing up is realizing this. But you think like, it is such a smart place, people would be a bit more intelligent, you know? I went out like on a weekly basis. This was considered a minimal amount of drinking.
Wow. As part of like a group of people from NUS, I probably went to a club like, did I even go at all?
Well, it's so accessible because it's all your frats and you're all in upstate New York and there's nothing else to do.
That's hilarious.
Like, I mean, at a certain point, I guess you can't study anymore. And
That's
then
a weird excuse.
people are in frats and sororities, and you have like an obligation to go to all these parties. And I wasn't in a frat or sorority, but I did set myself up for the next year because you really feel the social isolation if you aren't in one, in my opinion. And so I joined like rowing, like the sports team. And that's like the equivalent of joining a sorority.
There's probably like some people watching this video who are like, oh, this person doesn't like drinking. I see why she was in the military now.
No, but this is the other thing. People drink in the military. I arrived. I was such a goody two shoes. Oh, I'm not gonna drink. I'm gonna follow policy. They have their own fraternity. The military does,
What?
and they go.
Fraternity?
And they drink
Like in
all the
Cornell?
time.
They have a
Yeah.
Cornell fraternity?
They have a military Cornell fraternity. Yeah,
We can do that?
yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
I don't even say I have anything against drinking. I just have something against reckless drinking.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So it is kind of a tangent. But isolation was still like a very big problem in NUS because of the fact that the school is freaking gigantic. Ways to like meet people unless like you try really hard because just like the structure of an institution where you have thousands and thousands of people is that you meet like 10 new people a day and over the course of the semester you make like 1,010 acquaintances and you end up with like 2 friends.
Yeah, I think like Cornell can be the same way for people. And I really shielded myself from this by being so involved in a bunch of different things. Like, obviously, there's some things I would never say on camera about like stuff that I knew went on behind closed doors, but like, it's everywhere. If you walk home late at night, someone's gonna be throwing up in a bathroom. It becomes a norm, which kind of feeds into why I left. Like, do I really want to be involved with a bunch of people who drink so much on a weekly basis for 4 years? And I'm gonna pay $80K to do this? No, I mean, there was a fraternity that was consistently drugging girls, and then they said... See, this is just like normal to me. And then like, they...
I come from a society where you can get the death penalty for drugs.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
not me. And like they shut down the fraternity for like a semester, and then they reopened the following semester like on probation. But like everyone knew that it was like still happening.
Probation in this context.
I think like even the Air Force, the sexual assault policy is really screwed. I have like a bunch of stories in regards to like.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay, wait.
What was the question again?
We have to move on from sex and drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
that's really important. This is gonna make people watching this video not want to go to college at all, and it's gonna scare
It
parents.
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen that much at NUS. It's pretty safe.
Okay, so Mikaela, what was your trigger moment that you realized that you wanted to leave NUS?
I remember that in my first semester of NUS, I was having like a really weird love-hate relationship with Hall. I was telling people that I like Hall, but I feel like a bystander. I really enjoy watching everybody doing these fun things and doing really random shenanigans, like putting their friend's mattress onto the basketball field in the middle of night. But I just somehow never got involved in anything in Hall. Like, I just couldn't get into like the culture. In theory, this suits me really well. In practice, it really doesn't. My hall was full of engineering majors because it was right next to the engineering faculty, and I just couldn't talk to them about anything. They
do
were
you
so
feel-
bad.
So then you're saying that the main reason why you left is the social experience was not what you expected.
The hall thing was like a microcosm of me figuring out that I just was not finding my people in NUS in general. And then academically, the CHS program, everybody agreed that like it sucked ass. Like you can go onto like Reddit, I think even now, and people will be complaining about it. Everybody was like, this is a huge waste of my time, I'm not letting anything. And especially now that I experienced Minerva, where a lot of the content is like exactly the same, just taught differently. I'm like, oh, this is what you're trying to get me to learn. Wow, I didn't get that at all. Like after my full semester at NUS, I was like, what did I learn this semester? Huh. And there was a moment that I was like, It was memorizing. It was like, we're gonna teach you about climate change. The UN has given like projections of how the world's gonna go, and you have to memorize them.
Really interesting.
For like a multiple choice quiz. When you take an exam, you don't get the paper back, you just get your grade. So like I had a midterm, and then we were all like, oh, can we get our midterms back to see what our problems were? And the teachers were like, no. The final's gonna have half of the same content. We can't release it back to you because then next year we will have to write a whole new paper. And this was a course that was mandatory that 2,000 people were taking. You wouldn't get any of your exam grades back. So you just wouldn't know how you did. Which means that the entire purpose is about proving what you know instead of expanding what you know. Your professors are not actually monetarily incentivized to like teach you well. It's just wild. A professor gets paid usually based on how good their research output is, not how good they are at teaching you. So some profs generally don't care and they're just gonna like show up and like ramble for 2 hours and then leave, and you're gonna be like, what just happened? So a lot of profs actually do care, but they don't actually have to be good at teaching to be a professor. I got to a point where I was just like min-maxing my grades. I was doing really well for putting in very little time into studying. That was my first semester. For the next semester, I took a lot more courses that I enjoyed. I dropped some of the clubs that I was in, picked up other ones. I still had the same problem. I was doing 7 different courses. The normal was 5. I did 7. I was overloading, and I was still like, I'm not learning anything.
Do you want to talk about the club fair? and how that
was an exact moment, and that was in January when my high school had like a college fair where alumni came to share about their colleges. So I went there to talk about NUS philosophy. The fair's kind of a flop because not that many students came, so I just ended up talking to other university students. They were talking about how much they loved what they were learning, and I was just like, huh. If a high schooler came up to me right now and asked me like, so what are you doing? Why are you doing it? I would not be able to give them a very good answer. Then I had a crisis, and then I went home, and then I started looking into other universities. And then I thought of applying to art school, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to go to art school. How am I doing? And then this is where I discovered Minerva.
How did you guys tell your parents or your stakeholders about you were thinking of leaving or the process of transferring?
Oh, for me it was really funny because when I told people I wanted to leave, everyone was like, yeah. The thing that makes me really sad about NUS is that everybody agrees that there was a very big problem with like the curriculum. And when I told people I was leaving, nobody was surprised. When I told one of my seniors that I was leaving NUS and I was articulating the reasons I wanted to leave, she was like, a lot of people also think that what you're thinking, but you're the only person I know that's done something about it.
But did you talk about leaving to your parents before you found Minerva?
No, because it didn't feel like there's another option.
So it was like Minerva or nothing?
Yeah, it was Minerva or nothing. When I was applying to US schools with my parents, I didn't agree with it at the time, but now I agree with it, was that it doesn't make sense to go to a US school unless it's like Harvard or Stanford or something like that. Because a US school is really expensive, especially if your comparison is NUS as a Singaporean. It's one of the highest ranked schools in the world. You pay basically nothing compared to what you would pay to go to the States. To them, it really didn't make sense to go to a US school. And then I think after my first semester of NUS, I understood like the bigger systemic problems with universities. I realized that even if I went to like Harvard or Stanford, I wouldn't be completely happy. My mom, she really wanted me to go to NUS because she wants me to have a stable future. I went up to her and I was like, Mom, I have to tell you, I'm thinking of applying to this other school. I've already filled in half of the application. And she was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, huh? And then she was like, yeah, like every day you come home and all you do is complain about your courses.
Yeah, I had to leave the military first, and that was really hard. There's the big financial burden, so it's a conversation you have with your parent. I would echo the fact that a lot of my friends were like, yeah, the system sucks. This is a horrible place to be, but we're staying here because you don't have another option. And then I thought, oh, I could transfer to a different Ivy, I could go somewhere else in the States, but like ultimately I was gonna have the same problems that I was having here. I had two different options. The first being like go home, which I wasn't as enthused about. Just get my basic undergrad at a local university, work for my family's company, which pizzeria, so fun vibes. It would have been a really great learning opportunity and just get my undergrad really quick, live at home, much affordable, invest that money that maybe we would have spent on our education into the company. Or I was like, listen, if I'm not going to Minerva, or if I'm not going to Cornell, then I need to do something radical. Like I'm just gonna expand a business during my undergrad, or I'm gonna travel the world during my undergrad. I actually also considered—
You can do both.
I know, there you go. Applying like abroad, going to like Bocconi in Italy, or like UCL or LSE, or like a good business school in the UK or somewhere in Europe. But I was like, do we really want to pay for that type of education? And I didn't know if I would have similar problems. And then I found Minerva, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity for me. And we'll probably dive into this later. Minerva is a very specific fit. It takes a very specific type of person to want to go to the institution. But for me, it was like perfect.
Yeah, that was very similar to what I was thinking, because when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to go to a US school, and after I experienced NUS, I was like, higher education as an institution is broken.
Your university experience education-wise, very different than mine. I received a fabulous education at Cornell. They know how to teach people, professors are motivated, curriculum is great, they have unlimited resources. I received a great education. Is it worth $80,000? Probably not. But there's no doubt in my mind that it's a world-class education. And I would say the same for most Ivies. The difference is, are students willing to invest their time into learning?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I understood that it would be better, but I didn't think it would be $80,000 worth of better.
I'm not saying that it is,
yeah,
but it's definitely really good. And you get back what you invest. My professors were like, if you need help with internships, let me know. I can call someone. Or like, if you want to be my TA next year, we'd love to have you.
But I think that's part of like the environment. It's so hard to be self-motivated in this room full of people who are just there to leave as soon as possible.
It's very hard to be self-motivated in an environment where people expect everything to be handed to them.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I'm not saying this about everyone, but there is a large majority, especially within business, that comes from money, that doesn't need the education to be successful. Within business, and I think within tech and a lot of other careers, networking is everything. And so if you invest your time and energy into networking and you get results from that, why would you invest your time and energy into academics when you don't get results from what you're learning? The only reason that you would do that is if you truly value your own intellectual capacity and feel that it will benefit you in the future. There's a much delayed reaction between the investment and the result when it comes to your education versus when it comes to networking, the investment of a month of applications and the result of getting a job for the summer is very different. So people choose to invest in their time and energy into different sectors. And I think that this is completely reasonable. You want the job, you don't necessarily need the education to get the job. Why wouldn't you take that shortcut? But you definitely get a benefit at these institutions if you choose to invest in your education as well.
Okay, let's wrap up with the final question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the reputation of a top school influences students' decision more than it should?
I think people went to NUS because of the fact that it was a top school.
I think it influences people's decisions, but not more than it should. I think reputation matters. I think reputation opens doors. And I think that you're putting your time and energy somewhere where you want those results. And reputation is what gets you there. And I respect that. I think it's an extreme privilege to be able to set reputation aside. I think that reputation should affect what you choose. And if you can afford to go to an Ivy League and you need or want those doors open, I think it is entirely justified. Reputation is something that subconsciously and consciously we take into account, but what you're getting out of an institution is... Goodbye! No. At the end of the day, this is what an institution should provide, and it's a privilege to be able to not take into account reputation, and no one should shame someone for taking into account reputation, because at the end of the day, you're trying to steer your life in the best direction, and reputation does that for you.
I agree. I really don't blame the people that were in my classrooms for being in the classroom, because I fully understand that it is just you want a job, yeah, you should go to this institution. But it was just a really uninspiring environment for me that had a very different goal out of education. But I also think that that's part of the reason that higher education is broken, because you're getting all these people who are just there for the sake of a degree and not really because they want to learn, and then you're putting them in these classrooms in which all they're gonna do is sit there and pretend to pay attention.
No, thanks so much for joining.
This is how you can contact Megan. It's floating over here in the text here. And this is how you can contact me. Ta-da.
Thanks so much.
Look at that amazing text.
Bye.
If you're interested in seeing why we chose Minerva, you can watch the next
You should watch the second part of this video, which we're going to record right now.
Woo!